All right. But anyways, I want to get on the story. So we're going to hop in the time machine.
We're going to be in our interview before we know it. We haven't even touched the surface.
I know. We're going to go back to October. Back in October, there was a Judge Aaliyah Moses. She ordered the feds to quit cutting the concertina wire that Texas put up across and the buoy barriers.
Which they had to involve her because...
Well, it's wild. So the feds aren't enforcing the border. And so
they're stopped being Texas.
Texas started shipping. Actually, they started offering transportation to the migrants that are coming over to the city of their choice.
But not only that, the feds or Texas wanted to protect the border with barriers. Even while they were shipping or before, they were putting up barriers at the border.
We're going even before the barriers. So they offered this transportation to the city of choice to migrants. If you listen to any of the Democrats, they didn't offer it. They packed them up in the middle of the night. But no, they offered it. Where do you want to go? That one time with DeSantis was like a little gray area, yes, but it was still, those were still all voluntary people. They just got sent to a city that they didn't sign up for. No one had ever heard of. But it was a city adjacent to where they signed up for. So anyways, so then you got the blue cities coming out and saying, oh, these evil Republicans and Abbott is, Satan, whatever.
Well, it's crushing their economies, and
it is
because they're sanctuary cities. He's putting their money where their mouth is.
Their voting practices has been crushing Texas.
Absolutely.
So Texas is just spreading the wealth. I would argue Texas
still
maintains more migrants than are shipped around the country.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so Texas started putting up physical barriers. And then the feds started coming in and cutting or using heavy equipment to lift or maneuver so that the migrants could come through. Granted, these migrants are not Mexican. These migrants are migrants from Honduras, China,
Middle East,
Pakistan, India, everywhere. Now, the international law is you've got to go to the first safe nation and declare that you need help there. But our country, our Democrat policies has made it so that they all come here because the Democrats are going to hand them money, which is now the Democrat cities are now feeling the punch of that. Anyways, go on. So Texas took the feds to court and they got ordered to take the buoys down eventually, but the feds got ordered to quit cutting and messing with the concertina wire. They call it razor wire. It's concertina wire. They didn't put any, I don't know, razor wire's a false name. But anyway, so fast forward to a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Abbott has ordered his National Guard to the border, to the what is the name of the park? I forget. Eagle Pass Park, Shelby Park and Eagle Pass, and that's a main.
And they just call it Eagle Pass because it is one of the most high trafficked.
And it is. It's one of the larger high traffic areas, but it is across the river. So he orders the National Guard there. The National Guard goes and occupies it and doesn't let the feds in because the feds are not complying with federal law on this.
They're cutting the wires. They're cutting every bit that Texas is trying to do to protect its border.
So now we're in kind of a standoff. Now there was a woman and 2 kids who drowned in the river. Now they, of course, it's being spun. Reporting from the left is the National Guard stood by and watched these kids drown right off the shores of Texas. And then every other press that's not the left says, including the Mexican press, says, no, they drown on the Mexico side. Mexico is not manning it because obviously Americans aren't running the other direction, so Mexico doesn't need to man it. But they drowned on a side where U.S. response couldn't have got to them, and
these people are there thanks to coyotes and drug cartels that have got them there.
Yes.
This woman brought her 2 children through the desert rather than go through the front doors and ask for at the border crossings.
Yep. So now
she made this choice. So we can't forget that.
It's a sad deal all the way around. I'm not happy that these children got hurt or their mother. And yeah, but anyway, so I want to fast forward to now. So now, remember, we had Texas took the feds to court and got an injunction against the feds. Now the feds are taking Texas to court for blocking them from getting to the border. But at the moment, right now,
but it's a threatening situation now.
We have, I mean, is this a Fort Sumter moment?
This is scary.
Are we in 1860 Fort Sumter? We have National Guard standing across from the feds.
From the Department of Homeland Security.
And I think Senator Sandals' argument, if this was to work, could be a blueprint for both sides. California could use this as a blueprint against when Trump wins.
How so?
Well, if Trump has a law they roll out that California doesn't like, California can invoke the 10th Amendment and say, I don't see this in your Constitution.
Well, they'd have to vote for it through their legislature.
Sure. And that's when it would come through, is after Trump wins. When right now, Sandals' law could be filtered through, the Republican states. I just argue, see, we always have people the parties want to get in control of the federal government because they get to write laws that gets to punish or impose on everyone else. And that's the only time when we seem to care about these laws being written. And I want to tell every Republican right now, remember, if you have a law written, that law can be used against you.
I'm fine with it. Let's build a wall around California if that's what they want.
I want the Democrats to learn this. I remember Harry Reid when he put in the vote against or the vote for filibustering.
Yep.
And the Republicans all told him, this is going to be used against you. And it was used against him, not but 5 years later, used against him and his party. So
no, I think that this is a standoff now in Texas.
I know.
And if there's another state in the union that could be more.
Tennessee has sent people. Nevada has sent people.
But
Wyoming
Texas,
has sent people.
I'm proud it's Texas.
They've sent soldiers. They've sent National Guard.
I understand.
They're bolstering. We are staring at possible.
The United States administration right now is threatening soldiers against Texas.
It's crazy.
This people is, I'm sorry. We've had a long time. Texas has absorbed so many undocumented people. And the truth is, nobody's fixing anything. And Texas is trying to fix it. Even Arizona, who that governor was pretty total support of Biden, has since come out and said, we need the federal government to step in here because we are getting overwhelmed. And it's not just the fentanyl that's killing your kids. It's not just the uptick in sexual assaults or murder or crime. There are people dying because they're being sent back and brought back, and they're sneaking in. These people are not only sneaking in, but they're handed money, a cell phone, potential insurance, and who knows, maybe a voting ballot. We don't know.
Well, even
Arizona's governor is saying enough's enough. We're overwhelmed.
And she's a Democrat.
Absolutely. Chicago too.
Houston's mayor.
New York too.
Houston's mayor is one of the biggest shippers, and he's a Democrat. Not just that, you say maybe a ballot to vote. It doesn't need to be a ballot to vote. All they do is affect the census, and they get more electoral college votes.
Absolutely.
And they get more congressmen. California needs to have another census, because I would argue the Democrats have ramped this up because California lost, how many seats did they lose 2 years ago? 3-4 seats?
Yeah, but the
and
census
New York
isn't
lost too
for 10 years. So
that gives them time. They need to build those population.
But it gives us time to put a period and figure this out. Yeah. If it's reform on the border, if it's reform on the immigration system, I believe we should have reform.
I think we need to force through Trump's plan that the census divides people into citizen and not citizen, and only citizens count for
what do other countries
congressional votes. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but is common sense and it's lost. And I'm tired. And Governor Abbott, he made, it's one of the mic drop moments of our decade, of our lifetime. One of the best political moves we ever saw was starting to ship them to these sanctuary cities who always talk crap about Texas and their complaints and how it's racist or xenophobic.
I love it when they put a back-to-back video of now versus here. 2 years ago.
Yeah, now it's here in your neck of the woods. How do you like it? And keep in mind, it's a tiny fraction of what Texas deals with daily.
And Texas doesn't get help from them?
No.
Texas doesn't get help from Chicago or New York?
There has to be reform, and there has to be a stop
how
where
about
we
just
seal our borders.
A simple reform. If you want to become a sanctuary city, you fund the cost of housing the people in cities that are affected by it. Boom. Done.
I would much rather see the reform on the other side. If you want to be an American citizen, here's the expectations. It's not a 10-year waiting list. And it's not $50,000. It's just background checks. Let's do fingerprints. And P.S., you have to have a sponsor. You've got to have a job lined up.
What if we open the borders and give them zero benefits? You get nothing. You come over here, hat in hand.
You still got to know who they are.
Well, sure, we can still fingerprint them, but you get nothing. We'll give you the fingerprints for free. All right. So, okay.
You know what? If you reformed our immigration system, you would put coyotes out of business. Why are we so intent on letting women and children go across that border
for political
risking
power?
Death? This is crazy.
For political power.
We've got National Guard at that border. You've got people willing to go down and help. You've got border security down there, Border Patrol, and they're risking their lives every single day. And what's horrible is you get people killed in DUI accidents from repeat border infiltrators.
Oh, not just DUI.
They constantly go to prison. They get sent out.
Straight up violence.
And right now, there are countries letting their prisons, emptying their prisons and sending them to our country. Yep. And if that isn't an invasion, when you look at some of these border crossings, it is so rare to see families. It is military-aged men, and they are not just Mexican citizens looking for a better life.
Most of them aren't Mexican. Mexicans have quit being the demographic because Mexico's kind of on its way up. Maybe we should start running there. Anyways, we got to move on. We got to flow through a couple more stories.
Fred says evil people are allowing this to happen for evil reasons.
I'm telling you, the Democrats are doing it simply for political gain. They want more numbers. They recognize that these people are all going to try running to these cities that are going to be blue no matter who. It's just going to up that. They're hoping that New York State, by the next census, can gain one or two more
Republicans,
or can regain their lost Congress people. They want California State to gain its lost constituents, because California, I think, lost 4, New York lost 3, and Texas gained 2, and Florida gained 2. The numbers are off on that. That tells me that people spread out differently. They left, but they lost people because of the census. And I think the Democrats just want to bolster those back up, because what really matters in your presidential run is those electoral votes. And those are 2 states that the Republicans are not going to win back anytime soon unless those states have a severe, they'll hear a loud pop. And that is, they've got to push on their butt cheeks and push hard. And that loud pop will be their head being removed from their 4th point of contact.
Can I just say, though, the Mexican citizens that I know that have come to this country for a better life, they're conservative in their thoughts, their values. I think that they are very reasonable. And the thing about, the Republicans are not got clean hands here. They too let this border and the immigration get out of control because of the business side of it and bringing these immigrants over to work and then kind of leaving them to wander. So this is why we need reform. Yes, we need immigrants to work and then let them go home, because a lot of them come here seasonally.
We do need to have a
all of
migrant
that.
pass
We
system.
absolutely need that, but we needed to give them fair wages, and we
And it
need
needs to be a
let them
simple-
come back and
Mhm.
go back and come back and go back. That is all a good, healthy economy. And if there's work, give it some. But until both parties actually, this is why Trump is dropping bombs everywhere, because he's just saying that, look, we need to fix this, but we have to stop the bleeding right now, because this is bigger. This is bigger than, oh, Texas has a few 100,000 extra people. This is bigger than that. What's coming across this border right now is murdering your children. Fentanyl is murdering your children who make a mistake, who think they bought a pill that's going to make them happy, and it kills them. And DUIs, where people are driving drunk. They shouldn't even be in the country. They've already been deported 4 or 5 times. Young kids are getting raped.
We do have to move on to the stories, though.
Oh, really? You can do a diatribe, but I have to be quiet. Whatever. We need to get this figured out, guys. We need to hold our electeds accountable. And if Salt Lake City is a sanctuary city.
We'll skip that
I think the
one.
state is a sanctuary state.
The state is?
I believe so.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to vote on that.
The thing is, we have to stop this. And we do it by talking about it, not being afraid. Because good people are waiting to come here. And I know good people waiting to become citizens. And we're getting in our own way with getting those good, hardworking immigrants as citizens. And we need them to come out of the woodwork and say, look, I want to be an American citizen. I'm going to do this. I'll do what you guys require. And I'm not sneaking in. I'm here. I'm telling you who I am. I'm ready to work. I'm ready to raise a family here. But we're letting it turn into a third world country over here. Crime is rising. That's not a question. I don't think people are questioning that. We're seeing it.
Well, the fall of a republic is a self-solving problem. Because when it falls, this problem gets solved. Just other problems arise.
It's not like Chicago needed more crime, right?
No.
New York didn't need any more crime.
And I would argue that
it's going up.
I would argue that their crime is going up not because of migration. I would argue their crime is going up because a dude named George Soros poured a lot of money into progressive DAs. There is no more damage you can commit in the United States of America than to be a far left progressive DA. You carry the ability to destroy where you live, and they're proving it time and time again. That's just what it is.
It's an ideology that is rotten to its core. With DEI and progressiveness, there's absolute. You don't see this to its end. Planes fall out of the sky, for crying out loud. I mean, that's a whole nother ball game.
As we see right now, planes are falling out of the sky. But I want to do a quick play. This is so the World Economic Forum happened last week, and two of the most inspiring videos I've ever watched in my life came out of this, and we're not going to watch them in order that we probably should. But we are going to watch them.
Okay, when you start this, let's make sure the people at home can hear it.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm going to try. If you cannot hear it,
great honor
please
to
let me know.
Yeah, in the
Javier
comments.
Milei.
Hi, Mom.
As you know, is the freely elected
So
president
right now
of
we have
Argentina.
Dr.
It's
Evil.
actually your first trip to a foreign country after you have been elected. First, congratulations for your election, and congratulations also to your sister, who managed your
He's a badass. Can I say badass? Because
I don't know.
I
think
we'll
sometimes
let it
people
happen.
would say with
All right.
more
I've got this
radical
turned up all the way.
noises, but you introduce a new spirit to Argentina, making Argentina much more related to free enterprise, to entrepreneurial activities.
And we're just going
Also
to kind
to
of
bring Argentina
talk
back to
along
the
with it. And the reason we're
rule
going to do
of
that
law.
is because
So we have a very extraordinary person among
it makes it
us
so we don't get-
today.
I don't
And
think
of
we get
course, we
flagged
are
for this.
all
This is public.
eager
Also-
to listen to you. And again, a very cordial welcome to the World Economic Forum.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Hoy estoy acá
Today, I'm here
para decirles que Occidente
to tell you that the Western world is in danger.
está en peligro
And it is endangered because those who are supposed to have to defend the values of the West are co-opted by a vision of the world that inexorably leads to socialism and thereby to poverty.
lamentablemente
Unfortunately,
las últimas décadas
in recent decades,
motivados por algunos deseos
motivated by some well-meaning individuals willing to help others, and others motivated by the wish to belong to a privileged caste, the main leaders of the Western world have abandoned the model of freedom for different versions of what we call collectivism. We're here to tell you that collectivist experiments are never the solution to the problems that afflict the citizens of the world. Rather, they are the root cause. Do believe me, no one better placed than us, Argentines, to testify to these 2 points. When we adopted the model of freedom back in 1860, in 35 years we became a leading world power. And when we embraced collectivism over the course of the last 100 years, we saw how our citizens started to become systematically impoverished, and we dropped to spot number 140 globally. But before having the discussion, it would first be important for us to take a look at the data that demonstrate why free enterprise capitalism is not just the only possible system to end world poverty, but also that it's the only morally desirable system to achieve this. If we look at the history of economic progress, we can see how between the year 0 and the year 1800 approximately, world per capita GDP practically remained constant throughout the whole reference period. If you look at a graph of the evolution of economic growth throughout the history of humanity, you would see a hockey stick graph, an exponential function that remained constant for 90% of the time and which was exponentially triggered starting in the 19th century. The only exception to this history of stagnation was in the late 15th century with the discovery of the American continent. But for this exception, throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, global per capita GDP stagnated. Now, it's not just that capitalism brought about an explosion in wealth from the moment it was adopted as an economic system. But also, if you look at the data, what you will see is that growth continues to accelerate throughout the whole period. And throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, the per capita GDP growth rate remained stable at around 0.02% annually, so almost no growth. Starting in the 19th century, with the Industrial Revolution, the compound annual growth rate was 0.66%. And at that rate, in order to double per capita GDP, you would need some 107 years. Now, if you look at the period between the year 1900 and the year 1950, the growth rate accelerated to 1.66% a year. So you no longer need 107 years to double per capita GDP, but 66. And if you take the period between 1950 and the year 2000, you will see that the growth rate was 2.1%. Again, the CAGR, which would mean that in only 33 years we could double the world's per capita GDP. This trend, far from stopping, remains well alive today. If we take the period between the year 2000 and 2023, the growth rate again accelerated to 3% a year. year, which means that we could double world per capita GDP in just 23 years. That said, when you look at per capita GDP since the year 1800 and until today, what you will see is that after the Industrial Revolution, global per capita GDP multiplied by over 15 times, which meant a boom in growth that lifted 90% of the global population out of poverty. We should remember that by the year 1800, about 95% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty, and that figure dropped to 5% by the year 2020, prior to the pandemic. The conclusion is obvious. Far from being the cause of our problems, free trade capitalism as an economic system is the only instrument we have to end hunger, poverty, and extreme poverty across our planet. The empirical evidence is unquestionable. Therefore, since there is no doubt that free enterprise capitalism is superior in productive terms, the left-wing doxa has attacked capitalism, alleging matters of morality, saying, that's what the detractors claim, that it's unjust. They say that capitalism is evil because it's individualistic, and that collectivism is good because it's altruistic, of course, with the money of others. So they therefore advocate for social justice. But this concept, which in the developed world became fashionable in recent times, in my country has been a constant in political discourse for over 80 years. The problem is that social justice is not just, and it doesn't contribute either to the general well-being. Quite on the contrary, it's an intrinsically unfair idea because it's violent. It's unjust because the state is financed through tax, and taxes are collected coercively. Or can any one of us say that they voluntarily pay taxes? Which means that the state is financed through coercion, and that the higher the tax burden, the higher the coercion, and the lower the freedom. Those who promote social justice, the advocates, start with the idea that the whole economy is a pie that can be shared differently. But that pie is not a given. It's wealth that is generated in what Israel Kirzner, for instance, calls a market discovery process. If the goods or services offered by a business are not wanted, the business will fail unless it adapts to what the market is demanding. If they make a good quality product at an attractive price, they will do well and produce more. So the market is a discovery process in which the capitalists will find the right path as they move forward. But if the state punishes capitalists when they're successful and gets in the way of the discovery process, they will destroy their incentives, and the consequence is that they will produce less, the pie will be smaller, and this will harm society as a whole. Collectivism, by inhibiting these discovery processes and hindering the appropriation of discoveries, ends up binding the hands of entrepreneurs and prevents them from offering better goods and services at a better price. So how come that academia, international organizations, economic theory and politics demonize an economic system that has not only lifted out of extreme poverty 90% of the world's population, but has continued to do this faster and faster, and this is morally superior and just. Thanks to free trade capitalism, it is to be seen that the world is now living its best moment. Never in all of mankind's or humanity's history has there been a time of more prosperity than today. This is true for all. The world of today has more freedom, is rich, is more peaceful and prosperous. And this is particularly true for countries that have more freedom and have economic freedom and respect the property rights of individuals, because countries that have more freedom are 12 times richer than those that are repressed, and the lowest decile in terms of distribution in free countries are better off than 90% of the population of repressed countries, and poverty is 25 times lower, and extreme poverty is 50 times lower. And citizens in free countries live 25% longer than citizens in repressed countries. Now, what is it that we mean when we talk about libertarianism? And let me quote the words of the greatest authority on freedom in Argentina, Professor Alberto Venegas Lynch Jr., who says that libertarianism is the unrestricted respect for the life project of others, based on the principle of non-aggression, in defense of the right to life, liberty and property. Its fundamental institutions being private property, markets free from state intervention, free competition, the division of labor, and social cooperation, as part of which success is achieved only by serving others with goods of better quality or at a better price. In other words, capitalists, successful business people are social benefactors who, far from appropriating the wealth of others, contribute to the general well-being. Ultimately, a successful entrepreneur is a hero. And this is the model that we are advocating for the Argentina of the future, a model based on the fundamental principles of libertarianism, the defense of life, of freedom, and of property. Now, if free enterprise capitalism and economic freedom have proven to be extraordinary instruments to end poverty in the world, and we are now at the best time in the history of humanity, it is worth asking why I say that the West is endangered. And I say this precisely because in those of our countries that should defend the values of the free market, private property, and the other institutions of libertarianism, sectors of the political and economic establishment, some due to mistakes in their theoretical framework and others due to a greed for power, are undermining the foundations of libertarianism, opening up the doors to socialism and potentially condemning us to poverty, misery and stagnation. It should never be forgotten that socialism is always and everywhere an impoverishing phenomenon that has failed in all countries where it's been tried out. It's been a failure economically, socially, culturally, and it also murdered over 100 million human beings. The essential problem in the West today is not just that we need to come to grips with those who, even after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the overwhelming empirical evidence, continue to advocate for impoverishing socialism. But there's also our own leaders, thinkers, and academics who, relying on a misguided theoretical framework, undermine the fundamentals of the system that has given us the greatest expansion of wealth and prosperity in our history. The theoretical framework to which I refer is that of neoclassical economic theory, which designs a set of instruments that unwillingly, or without meaning to, ends up serving the intervention by the state, socialism and social degradation. The problem with neoclassicals is that the model they fell in love with does not map reality, so they put down their mistakes to supposed market failures rather than reviewing the premises of the model. On the pretext of a supposed market failure, regulations are introduced which only create distortions in the price system, prevent economic calculus, and therefore also prevent saving, investment and growth. This problem lies mainly in the fact that not even supposedly libertarian economists understand what the market is, because if they did understand, it would quickly be seen that it's impossible for there to be something along the lines of market failures. The market is not a mere graph describing a curve of supply and demand. The market is a mechanism for social cooperation where you voluntarily exchange ownership rights. Therefore, based on this definition, talking about a market failure is an oxymoron. There are no market failures. If transactions are voluntary, the only context in which there can be a market failure is if there is coercion. And the only one that is able to coerce generally is the state, which holds a monopoly on violence. Consequently, if someone considers that there is a market failure, I would suggest that they check to see if the state intervention involved. And if they find that that's not the case, I would suggest that they check again, because obviously there's a mistake. Market failures do not exist. An example of these so-called market failures described by the neoclassicals are the concentrated structures of the economy. However, without increasing returns to scale functions, whose counterpart are the concentrated structures of the economy, we couldn't possibly explain economic growth since the year 1800 until today. Isn't this interesting? Since the year 1800 onwards, with population multiplying by 8 or 9 times, per capita GDP grown by over 15 times. So there are growing returns, which took extreme poverty from 95% to 5%. However, the presence of growing returns involves concentrated structures, what we would call a monopoly. How come then that something that has generated so much well-being for the neoclassical theory is a market failure? Neoclassical economists think outside of the box. When the model fails, you shouldn't get angry with reality, but rather with the model and change it. The dilemma faced by the neoclassical model is that they say they wish to perfect the functioning of the market by attacking what they consider to be failures, but in so doing, they don't just open up the doors to socialism, but also go against economic growth. An example, regulating monopolies, destroying their profits and destroying growing returns automatically would destroy economic growth. In other words, whenever you want to correct a supposed market failure inexorably, as a result of not knowing what the market is, or as a result of having fallen in love with a failed model, you are opening up the doors to socialism and condemning people to poverty. However, faced with the theoretical demonstration that state intervention is harmful and the empirical evidence that it has failed couldn't have been otherwise, the solution to be proposed by collectivists is not greater freedom, but rather greater regulation, which creates a downward spiral of regulations until we're all poorer and the life of all of us depends on a bureaucrat sitting in a luxury office. Given the dismal failure of collectivist models and the undeniable advances in the free world, socialists were forced to change their agenda. They left behind the class struggle based on the economic system and replaced this with other supposed social conflicts which are just as harmful to life as a community and to economic growth. The first of these new battles was the ridiculous and unnatural fight between man and woman. Libertarianism already provides for equality of these sexes. The cornerstone of our creed says that all humans are created equal, that we all have the same unalienable rights granted by the Creator, including life, freedom, and ownership. All that this radical feminism agenda has led to is greater state intervention to hinder the economic process, giving a job to bureaucrats who have not contributed anything to society. Examples, ministries of women or international organizations devoted to promoting this agenda. Another conflict presented by socialists is that of humans against nature, claiming that we human beings damage the planet, which should be protected at all costs, even going as far as advocating for population control mechanisms or the bloody abortion agenda. Unfortunately, these harmful ideas have taken a strong hold in our society. Neo-Marxists have managed to co-opt the common sense of the Western world, and this they have achieved by appropriating the media, culture, universities, and also international organizations. The latter case is the most serious one, probably, because these are institutions that have enormous influence on political and economic decisions of the countries that make up the multilateral organizations. Fortunately, there's more and more of us who are daring to make our voices heard, because we see that if we don't truly and decisively fight against these ideas, the only possible fate is for us to have increasing levels of state regulation, socialism, poverty, and less freedom, and therefore will be having worse standards of living. The West has unfortunately already started to go along this path. I know to many it may sound ridiculous to suggest that the West has turned to socialism, but it's only ridiculous if you only limit yourself to the traditional economic definition of socialism, which says that it's an economic system where the state owns the means of production. This definition, in my view, should be updated in the light of current circumstances. Today, states don't need to directly control the means of production to control every aspect of the lives of individuals. With tools such as printing money debt, subsidies, controlling the interest rate, price controls, and regulations to correct the so-called market failures. They can control the lives and fates of millions of individuals. This is how we come to the point where, by using different names or guises, a good deal of the generally accepted political offers in most Western countries are collectivist variants, whether they proclaim to be openly communists, fascists, Nazis, socialists, social democrats, national socialists, Democrat Christians, Christian Democrats, neo-Keynesians, progressive, populist, nationalists, or globalists. At bottom, there are no major differences. They all say that the state should steer all aspects of the lives of individuals. They all defend a model contrary to that one which led humanity to the most spectacular progress in its history. We have come here today to invite the rest of the countries in the Western world to get back on the path of prosperity, economic freedom, limited government, and unlimited respect for private property are essential elements for economic growth. And the impoverishment produced by collectivism is no fantasy, nor is it an inescapable fate. But it's a reality that we Argentines know very well. We have lived through this, we have been through this, because as I said earlier, ever since we decided to abandon the model of freedom that had made us rich, we have been caught up in a downward spiral, as part of which we are poorer and poorer day by day. So this is something we have lived through, and we are here to warn you about what can happen if the countries in the Western world that became rich through the model of freedom stay on this path of servitude. The case of Argentina is an empirical demonstration that no matter how rich you may be, or how much you may have in terms of natural resources, or how skilled your population may be, or educated, or how many bars of gold you may have in the central bank, if measures are adopted that hinder the free functioning of markets, free competition, free price systems, if you hinder trade, if you attack private property, the only possible fate is poverty. Therefore, in concluding, I would like to leave a message for all business people here and for those who are not here in person but are following from around the world. Do not be intimidated either by the political class or by parasites who live off the state. Do not surrender to a political class that only wants to stay in power and retain its privileges. You are social benefactors. You're heroes. You're the creators of the most extraordinary period of prosperity we've ever seen. Let no one tell you that your ambition is immoral. If you make money, it's because you offer a better product at a better price, thereby contributing to general well-being. Do not surrender to the advance of the state. The state is not the solution. The state is the problem itself. You are the true protagonists of this story. And rest assured that as from today, Argentina is your staunch, unconditional ally. Thank you very much, and long live freedom. Damn it.
I have to say that how ironic is it that this man has come to Davos to speak to the world powers?
Because he's a new president, so they invite him there, and he comes there and he pokes him in the eye.
Oh, he drops a mic in their face. And the problem is, I'm sad to say that here's what he's telling you. He's telling you that his country has seen collectivism destroy what once was a great free nation, and he's watching it happen to the Western world in real time now. And he is warning these people of Davos and the world that if we continue down this path, we're done. And he knows. And as the president of Argentina, he has vowed to bring the republic and freedom back to Argentina. And he even quotes that man is free because of unalienable rights given by God. He basically quotes our Constitution, our Bill of Rights in not so many ways, and property, our rights to property. So we have this man from a little country who's got tons of experience in his own history of what collectivism has done. And he's basically giving the Western world a warning, and the leaders and the all-powerful world leaders of Davos. He's saying, your stuff is garbage and you're going to ruin our world. And that's why he's making so much news right now, because he had the gall to do that at Davos.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. It's awesome. It's awesome what he said, what he did. There's another shorter talk coming out of Davos that I want to play.
I would love you guys to look him up. If you haven't seen that speech, please do.
Javier Milei, all his speeches. I mean, when he walks around with the chainsaw, he has cut, what was it? He cut 500,000 government jobs.
Right, because the government was too big. And bureaucrats were the problem.
Yeah, it's insane. He did all the stuff that we have been promised by so many Republican presidents. Now, he's a Ron Paul style libertarian, and he's been compared to Trump the whole time, you know, the anti big government guy. But
I need to share this on our page, I think.
I would argue, if you look at it, I think I already shared it on that. If not, it's somewhere. But anyways, he's awesome. But I want to ask you guys a question about this. He has also promised his people the retaking of the Falklands. Now, how many people in the audience know what the Falklands are and know a little thing called the Falklands War? Do you know what it is?
No, go on. I'm going to
It was a
share
war.
this on our page, so check it out.
It was a war in the 80s, where the Falklands, the Falklands. Why is this still on share? Let me turn that off. There we go. The Falklands was a bit of property that was owned by the Brits, and Argentina tried to take it back. And the Brits beat him handily, but now he's kind of made a lot of British people that are naturally on our side angry, because he's arguing to take back the Falklands. It's an atoll of islands off of the eastern coast of Argentina. So we'll have to see what happens there. Yes, the British took care of business, but I wonder if Argentina had, say, 4 years of free market and growth, and the Brits continue down their path of non-free market and non-growth, would that change the outcome of that? But anyways, that is one thing he's done that a lot of people have indigestion over, and I don't know why the Brits want to maintain the Falklands anyway, but they do. So that's where we're at there. And then we had another guy at Davos who gave another talk. Now, this is the Heritage Foundation president, Kevin Roberts, giving a little bit of a chat. Now, this guy, he also brings it heavy and keeps it awesome while he does so.
One thing that Davos, you might say, and the people come here stand up for, is liberal democracy.
It's laughable that you would, or anyone would, describe Davos as protecting liberal democracy. I'll be candid here because I think I've been invited here to be candid. Elites tell us that open borders and even illegal immigration are okay. The average person tells us in the United States that both rob them of the American way of life. Elites also tell us that public safety isn't a problem in big American cities. Just travel to New York or Washington or Dallas, Texas. The average person will tell you that the lack of public safety damages not just the American way of life, but their life. Elites tell us that we have this existential crisis with so-called climate change. The solutions, the average person know, cost more human lives, especially in Europe during the time that you need heating, than do the problem and the problems themselves. The fourth, China. The number one adversary, not just to the United States, but to free people on planet Earth. Not only do we at Davos not say that, we give the Chinese Communist Party a platform. And fifth, as we sit here, another supranational organization, the World Health Organization, is discussing foisting gender ideology upon the global South. These are practices that are under review, if not being rejected, by countries in Northern Europe. The new president, especially if it's President Trump, will, as you like to say, trust the science. He will understand the basic biological reality of manhood and womanhood. And do you know why? Not because of retribution, not because he's a dictator, but because he has the power of the American people behind him. Let me just correct the slight assertion you made there. We want Ukraine to win. We want to see Ukraine win with a lot more help from European allies. I think the United States has a role. Heritage has been clear about this for 2 years now, that there is a world in which we support military aid for Ukraine. Our first obligation in foreign policy is to look at it through the lens of what's best for the American citizen. Joe Biden has done a god-awful job in articulating what that is. The kind of person who will come into the next conservative administration is going to be governed by one principle, and that is destroying the grasp that political elites and unelected technocrats have over the average person. And if I may, I will be candid and say that the agenda that every single member of the administration needs to have is to compile a list of everything that's ever been proposed at the World Economic Forum and object all of them wholesale.
It's laughable that you would, or anyone would describe.
Okay, I shared that on our page in case you didn't get to see that. It looks like you did, so I'm so happy. I also shared the previous speech. It's a lot longer. It's 30 minutes.
Yes.
But if you've got the time, listen, because he just referred to the Argentinian president, and he was just as empowered by that and
Javier
inspired.
Milei. Man, what would it be like? He's been a wrecking ball. Did you ever watch the video of him when he's in there and he's got this big old whiteboard with all the little sticky notes on it, and it's all the different institutions in their government,
all the
that are BS,
departments,
and he's going, where the?
It's like the FBI, it's the EPA, it's the Department of Education in the United States realm. It's like that. He's going through all these Argentinian.
And he's just pulling them off the wall.
He's like, we don't need it. We don't need it. We don't need it.
And Argentina, we may see. I mean, we may see.
Fred,
an
he can
explosion.
only serve one more term. Unless something got changed. Like with Eisenhower, they changed the rules. But yeah, he's got.
What if? I mean,
two terms.
This isn't fatalist. I want you guys to follow me on this. But what if we watch Argentina stay on this path of liberty and keep fighting this, and we see Argentina explode on the world as a beacon of freedom? That, you know, it's not me saying America should take a step back, but we have another argument to follow.
We also have another place to go in case this one falls.
We see Taurus arms become an excellent piece of weaponry, maybe even Bursa. Yeah, Holly for president. That's right. Holly 2028.
Oh my gosh, I love you.